Did you ever stop and think that every single bad thing that ever happened to you was somehow related to this spiritual war that's raging behind the scene? It kind of puts it in a whole new light. I refer to it as the angelic conflict. We're involved in a spiritual war. It all began with Lucifer's rebellion, recorded in Isaiah 14:12-15, Ezekiel 28:12-19. And we don't know when that occurred, but we do know that at some point after that rebellion, he infiltrated the human race. This is where he entered into the garden. You have a perfect garden, you have two perfect people, and he invades. And this, of course, results in the temptation and the fall of Adam and Eve into sin. Genesis 3:1-8. The next stage in the conflict is that God declares war. Victory is prophesied. And this is found in Genesis 3:15. The seed of the woman is going to crush the head of the serpent. Your seed are going to be against her seed, but her seed is going to crush your head. So her seed includes, first of all, Christ himself, and then believers all down through the ages. We are all included in the seed of the woman. The fourth stage of the conflict is Israel's torment. Revelation 12:1-6, the woman who is in travail. The word that's used there actually means torment, which includes the whole history in the Old Testament. Why was Israel so attacked by Satan? Because he knew that Israel was going to bring the Savior into the world that was going to defeat him, and if he could destroy the nation, he could win the conflict. Stage 5 of the conflict, reserve forces are brought in. This is the church. Israel had so corrupted their way that Israel is sidelined on the course of history, and with the day of Pentecost, we have new, fresh forces brought forward, and that is the church. 2 Corinthians 10:3-6. Though we walk in the flesh, we don't war against the flesh. The weapons of our warfare are mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. That is a summary, if you will, of our conflict and our weaponry. 6. We have the issue of weapons to these reserve forces in Ephesians 6:10-18. Paul highlights the weapons that you and I are to use in this conflict. He mentions them in 2 Corinthians 10, but they're identified in Ephesians 6:10-18. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. He goes through the whole demonic hierarchy, and then he starts listing the weapons of our warfare, and it begins with the belt of truth. We start with learning the Bible, and from the belt of truth, we move on to the breastplate of righteousness, which of course is the imputed righteousness of Christ. And we go to the sandals, which are the sandals of service. And then we have the shield of faith, the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit. And all of them lead to prayer. Praying always with all prayer and supplication. That's our weaponry. Which leads us to stage 7. God brings forth Israel's special forces. We play our part through the church age, and then the rapture takes place. And in Revelation 7:1-8, we have 144,000 Israeli special forces, spiritual warriors brought onto the scene of history. And then, of course, this will also include the two witnesses in Revelation 11:1-10. The eighth and last point is the final victory. It's pretty important because it's repeated over and over in Revelation. We see it in Revelation 12:10-12, comes up again in Revelation 14:14-20, and then, of course, the final portrayal, Revelation 19:11-16. What you basically have in those 8 points is from the fall of Lucifer at some point in unrecorded ancient history to the victory of Christ at the second coming of Christ at the end of the book of Revelation. That pretty much wraps up history, and it also explains something else. Why does life hurt? Why do we lose? Why do we suffer? Why are we attacked? Why are we maligned? Why do friends turn on us? Why does family hate us? If instead of getting mad at that person or reacting at what someone has said or what someone has done, or I have a horrible temper, I confess to you, I get angry and frustrated. But you know what? The minute I just recall to my mind, this is part of the spiritual war. And how I respond to this is much more important than whether I solve the problem or make it go away.